continue to have that. I can't see the reason why they've come away from this country.
I think the UK design industry has quite a challenge ahead of itself. A lot of the reason why UK design, or the approach to design by British designers, is so internationally successful is because of the way that designers are taught in this country. But as funding from our higher education institutes is decreasing, and they are having to increasingly look overseas for international students to come here or to open branches in China and in India, when they are starting to teach those designers our approach to design, so if we're talking maybe 5-10 years from now, then we're going to start finding designers that are equally as strategic as what we have at home at the moment. And we have quite a big challenge, longer term, ahead of us in how do we stay ahead of the game, and how do we keep the value added and the high end of the fees. The Department for Culture, Media and Sport has been driving something called the Creative Economy Programme over the last year. So it's not just design that's in this situation, it's music, film, television, publishing, it's all our creative industries. Even on the policy side, everyone is now copying what we've done here. Even the Design Council, we heard David Kester earlier this evening saying, we're telling the Indians and the Dutch and the Chinese how we do things here. And I'm like, no, don't tell me. This is our competitive advantage. There's a lot of research going into this at the moment in terms of how we start protecting some of our intellectual property as a country, full stop, instead of just giving it all away.
When we talk about us, the UK, this little island, it is kind of a bit out of date, really. I mean, we're at minimum part of the European Union, which is now 450 million people as a region rather than individual countries, and there's more and more collaboration going on. So I think it is a little bit myopic to talk about the UK context when most of our clients are international clients. Most of our projects, even if they are for one particular country, will have international implications because they'll be exported from that market, etc. So yes, it is very much a global marketplace.
I think because it's not just design that we carry a heritage of education, very sophisticated retail, very sophisticated product development, very sophisticated brand development, and design is the thing that services that. So that when clients come to London, they're not looking at it as a design industry, they're saying this is the place where great brands are being successful. Who are the people who help make them successful? So it's design by association. So London will always be a great shop window. And that's, we should keep on playing on that. The minute we drop that and take the fact that London's hugely multicultural, so you've got creative people from all over the world who choose to work in London, means that London is an engine room of product creators and brand creators and design makers. And it's a bit like why are great chefs French, or why are great fashion designers Italian, or great engineers German. I think there's an understanding amongst clients internationally that great design is done in Britain, and London is the shop window of that.
I think this is one of those questions. I just came from a meeting earlier where they used Hollywood to depict sort of the vision, and I queried whether Hollywood was the right vision because Hollywood is being replaced by Bollywood and so on. And I think that we have a period in the next 5-10 years. I'm not an economist, but what I see happening is that a lot of our skills that we have here, which are the best in the world, are being recognised by the BRIC countries. They're desperate to soak up and learn from us, and then actually sell to their local markets, which are much, much bigger. So, they don't want to, the Chinese don't want to sell to the UK, that's 60 million. They want to sell to 1.6 billion of their own domestic market. And I think that it may be one of those things that, with the best endeavour, we actually, in 10-15 years' time, the industry will dwindle whatever, because we won't be able to service our local industry and our local economy, and we won't have the necessary kind of local knowledge to service the overseas markets, because they will then have the same level of expertise. Whether culturally we have certain skills which are unique to a British mentality, I don't know, because you only have to look at history and see how that's changed over 100 years. So I think in the short time frame, yes, we're going to be all right. I think in the longer term, change happens.
Well, I think it's interesting because we heard from small design agencies tonight that actually they're in the UK market and that's where they're keeping their focus. And some of them have made a strategic choice not to look to overseas markets because they just don't have the time, and actually at the end of the day the margins aren't large enough to justify them investing all the upfront investment to actually start to compete in those markets. So I think what that raises is, again, can we afford to be so insular and just look to within the UK market? Because increasingly there's going to be international designers who are just as capable of doing it for UK clients in the UK market. And I think we do need to just take down those barriers, those international boundaries that we've been hearing for the last 2 decades at least, that these international barriers are eroding and disappearing. And I think we need to actually become really aware of that we're part of the global industry, we're not in our own cocoon.
I think it's about creating an environment and maintaining an environment where creativity thrives and supporting that. Now that means sustaining a very, very strong education system, not just in our universities, but in our schools as well. It's about creating an environment as well, culturally and in business, which recognises and values design and creativity as integral to success. So all of these things are important, and there are also things that governments can do in terms of working with other governments around the world to protect intellectual property, for instance. So there are all sorts of interesting things that governments actually can do that will enable businesses to thrive. But ultimately, of course, it's always down to the individuals. And those that are ambitious and are looking for that business is there to be had. And I think that was one of the other interesting things that came out from this evening, was that the scale of opportunity internationally is immense. In India, you only have to look at the sort of extraordinary challenges. You've got an economy which has grown in GDP by 9.2% in 1 year. In the last 10 years, it's exploded as an economy. This isn't a developing nation, it's a developed nation. There are immense design opportunities in a country like India or China or Brazil. And these challenges are both from the industrialized base, which is got huge and immense tasks and projects for designers, but also often in social infrastructure and in dealing with a lot of the competing challenges that some emerge within an economy that's changing so fast. Societal issues and so forth, delivering health systems and health services and dealing with the complexities of a fast-changing environment. So all of these are phenomenal opportunities for design. But they're not things that small design companies will necessarily want to just throw themselves into. And I thought that was one of the interesting conversations that came out tonight. You know, designers increasingly will and are indeed working in partnership.